However, microscopic analysis has now revealed 9 different undigested herbs and spices, including celery seeds, coriander, and fennel. It seems that, like their modern Italian counterparts, even the poorer people of Herculaneum practiced a sophisticated level of cookery. And, what's more, their tastes stretched far beyond the slopes of Mount Vesuvius.
The black pepper is by far the most exotic food item, as it would have come all the way from India. And I actually found 2 peppercorns at different locations in the sewer, which means that 2 different sets of people living in different apartments would have been able to buy black pepper.
It would be another 1.5 millennia before the poor in Britain could afford the same taste.
They clearly also cared a lot about food and flavor and what they were eating. And so the people in Herculaneum were definitely living to eat, not just eating to live.
The analysis of the material from the sewer tells us the diet of Herculaneum's people was rich and varied. The fact that a sewer was built here at all tells us something else about this place.
Some people imagine that a Roman town was a filthy, unhealthy place, rather like a medieval city or even Victorian London. But the Romans had an obsession with hygiene. Their doctor said you need to bathe regularly, and a town like Herculaneum has an abundant provision of public baths. Here we're in the suburban baths. This is the cold dip, and you can see that the water would come right up here. And you can get, what, 12, even more people here at the same time. And if you're worried that the water's going to get a bit dirty with all those people, never fear. Here's the plug hole to let it out. They can change the water regularly.
We can't be sure if the entire population of Herculaneum was allowed to use the baths. But what we do know is that everyone had access to a clean water supply.
Were Roman towns filthy, unhealthy places, as some people seem to think? Look around you, and you see the Romans really care about hygiene. Their town is provided with running water, public fountains. Look at this one. It's even got this lovely figure of Venus. And what's she doing? She's washing her hair. Beautiful. She cares about the body, keeping clean. And it's not just a public fountain. Private houses have running water too. Here we've got part of the water distribution system of the town. Up on the top, there was a cistern. You've got lead pipes running up, and that gives the pressure so that the water can go into individual houses. And there are pipes running right down the pavement. You can see 3 pipes running there, feeding off into individual houses.
It's estimated that the population of Herculaneum was around 4,000, small even by Roman standards, and no greater than some British villages today. And yet, even in the quarter of the town excavated, they had 3 public baths, a primary and secondary sewer system, and over 80 latrines. They enjoyed a level of public amenities not matched until modern times. Not only do they provide all these facilities, but the magistrates are really keen to keep the place clean. And here they've written up, here's the name of Marcus Rufelius Robia and Aulus Tetius. And they're giving a pretty strict warning here, no dumping rubbish by the public fountain. And they then specify the punishment. If you're a free man, you get fined, and if you're a slave, you get flogged. And suddenly, there opens up in front of us that vast gulf between the world of the free and the slave. The slave is punished by flogging, and the flogging is a terrible thing, not just very painful, but it leaves a scar, a mark on you for life. You can never become a citizen if you've been flogged. And it's on this most infamous institution of the ancient world, slavery, that Herculaneum offers the most surprising insight of all. This was a town of slaves and their owners. The most famous of those slave owners is commemorated right here.
Marcus Nonius Balbus here was Herculaneum's biggest benefactor. He must have made a pile as a governor of a Roman province. And then he spent some of his money on his town. And the walls up above us were rebuilt by Marcus Nonius Balbus. Another sign of his enormous wealth was the sheer number of his slaves. When a Roman gave freedom to a slave, the slave took his name. And there are over 50 people in Herculaneum who carried the name of Marcus Nonius.
It's a name that continued long after him, as this boundary marker between two home-owning ex-slaves shows.
On this side is Julia, and it's her wall, private in perpetuity. And on this side is Marcus Nonius Damma, freedman of Marcus, his wall, private in perpetuity. And we can tell where he comes from because that name Damma is distinctive of Syria, as in Damascus. So he's come from the other side of the Mediterranean world.
A tiny town like Herculaneum was attracting immigrants from Syria and beyond. Often they came as slaves, but what this place and the Roman Empire offered them was the chance to buy into something unique in the ancient world.
What makes Roman slavery so different from any other slave society we know about is the way that a slave could be not just freed, but given full citizenship. It's this dynamic flow from slavery to citizenship that makes Roman society quite unique, and there's nowhere better than Herculaneum to see that.
These marble tablets from Herculaneum are the only surviving documents like this from the Roman world. They list the freedmen and full citizens of the town. What they suggest is that up to 80% of the town's male citizens were ex-slaves, pointing to a huge degree of social mobility, even in the smallest of Roman towns. With over 300 skeletons, surely our anthropologists must have the evidence to work out the social makeup of our group. This female seems to bear all the hallmarks of a slave.
Mostra delle patologie, delle modificazioni su alcune parti dell'osso.
Osso
dell'avambraccio, il radio, un osso dell'avambraccio. E in questo caso questo è un punto di attacco per il muscolo bicipite e lo vediamo molto sviluppato rispetto a quello che normalmente dovrebbe essere, e comunque è un indice di un'attività a carico dell'articolazione del gomito particolarmente prolungata ed evidente.
Stiamo parlando di schiavi, schiave.
Ad Ercolano, ma come gran parte del mondo romano, la condizione di schiavo è una condizione aperta in uscita, per cui magari avrà fatto un certo tipo di attività durante la vita, ma a un certo punto sarà stato così bravo a guadagnarsi la libertà e a diventare ricco che non è più schiavo, però comunque continua ad avere sullo scheletro i segni della schiavitù. Quindi dire povero, ricco, schiavo libero ad Ercolano è un po' un azzardo.
But there's other unique evidence that can shed light on the social makeup of the town. What's special about Herculaneum is that the records survive that show that this was an upwardly mobile society, where full citizenship was the prize and slaves were battling to secure it. This system had a dual purpose: to encourage slaves to work hard and then buy into the empire by granting them citizenship.
Here, in the storerooms of the Naples Museum, are kept one of the most valuable insights into the Roman world. They are the wooden tablets on which people recorded their legal affairs.
Originally, these tablets had a top layer of wax on which the legal wranglings of the people of Herculaneum were painstakingly transcribed. The heat of the eruption melted the wax, but we can still read the minute scratch marks made on the carbonized wood below. Fortunately, when it came to legal matters, the Romans didn't do things by halves.
Luckily, the Romans were really nervous about forgery. So they wouldn't just have one copy of a document, they had 3 copies. You can see here some little holes, which is the string which ties together the 3 copies. And by looking at these different versions, you can puzzle together a fascinating story. A wonderful example of these documents comes from the house of the Bicentenary, and there was found a dossier of dozens of documents recording a big legal battle. The argument was whether a girl called Petronia Justa was free or a slave, and that depended on whether at the time of her birth her mother was free or a slave. To resolve the problem, they call in members of the household, neighbours, who all give witness and all have contradictory versions.
We don't know who won, but what it tells us is that in this case it was possible for a slave girl to challenge her status in court. Another really important bundle of documents came from the house just 2 doors down from Petronia Justa.
It's really difficult, just from looking at a Roman house, to tell what the status of the owner was. Look at this house. Grand, lovely garden. This is very much a des res. There are very nice bedrooms in the background here. And then over here we've got a magnificent great reception room. You can hear it echoing, wonderful. And this lovely mosaic on the floor. And everything makes you think this must be someone really smart, one of the elite of the town. As it happens, we know exactly who lived here, because in a bedroom right up here was a bundle of documents, and it's this character Vinidius Ennicus, and he's an ex-slave. He's obviously very much a favoured slave, and he's given his freedom, and that was quite common, but he's given his freedom underage. Terrific, now I'm a free man. But that wasn't enough for him, because he wanted to be a full Roman citizen too. And it was really worth it. A citizen gets the vote, but he can also inherit property. Now, normally you have to be 30 to become a full Roman citizen if you start as a slave. But there's a special legal loophole, and Vinidius Ennicus uses it. If you get legally married and then have a child, declare the child before the local magistrates, they can give you a certificate that says, you now merit Roman citizenship. Here we have an example of a bit written in ink, and though black ink is a little hard to make out against charcoal, if I get the light right, I can see L. Vinidius Ennicus. There's his name. And here we can see he's declaring the birth of a daughter before the magistrates. Filiam natam esse ex Livia acte uxore sua, that a daughter was born to him by his wife Livia acte. We know he achieved his ambition and made it to full citizenship because we can find his name in the list of citizens inscribed publicly in marble. But it was very important to him to keep the legal proof, just like his birth certificate or other personal documents, locked away in his house.
Living here at the foot of a peaceful Mount Vesuvius, Vinidius Ennicus and Petronia Justa had no idea their world was about to end.